The air in the courtroom is thick with tension. Rows of stiff wooden benches line the room, occupied by an audience of strangers, some awaiting their own fate, others simply observing the proceedings. The judge's bench, elevated above all else, stands as a stark reminder of authority, of a system that often feels distant and unyielding. Judge Raymond Prescott, a man in his 60s with a deep furrowed brow and an ever-present look of disdain, presides over the court. He is known for his no-nonsense attitude, his impatience, and more notably, his history of biased rulings, particularly against people he deems irresponsible. And in his eyes, Lisa Carter fits that category perfectly. Lisa sits at the defendant's table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She's a young black woman in her early 30s, dressed in a simple yet neat outfit she had to scrape together for this occasion. Her face, though weary, is filled with quiet determination. She's here not just for herself, but for her 8-year-old son, Malik. She's been through hardship before, but nothing quite like this. Today she stands at risk of losing the only home she and Malik have ever known. And the worst part? She's done nothing wrong. Lisa's journey to this courtroom was paved with hard work, sacrifice, and setbacks. She had spent the last few years trying to rebuild her life after her fiancé, Malik's father, passed away unexpectedly. For years she had worked tirelessly as a medical assistant, balancing long shifts with raising her son. But when the clinic she worked at shut down, she was left scrambling for a new job. Despite applying to dozens of positions, she found herself facing rejection after rejection. In the meantime, she took on gig work, cleaning houses, babysitting, anything to make ends meet. Her landlord, Gerald Whitman, had always been indifferent at best and predatory at worst. Even though Lisa had managed to keep up with rent, he had recently filed for her eviction. The reason? A technicality in her lease agreement, one she was certain wasn't legitimate. Lisa had proof that she had paid her rent in full. She had receipts, bank statements, and even messages exchanged with Whitman. But she knew how cases like these often went, especially in front of Judge Prescott. She wasn't just fighting against an eviction. She was fighting against a system designed to break people like her. The moment Lisa opens her mouth to present her case, Judge Prescott cuts her off. "Miss Carter, let's not waste the court's time. I've seen cases like yours before." His voice is thick with condescension. Lisa stiffens. "Your Honor, I have proof that I'm sure you do," he interrupts, waving a dismissive hand. "But let's focus on the real issue here, responsibility. Single mothers like yourself always seem to find themselves in these predicaments, don't they?" A murmur runs through the courtroom. Lisa's stomach tightens. The judge leans back in his chair, flipping through a file lazily. "Do you have a stable job at the moment?" Lisa swallows hard. "I'm in between jobs, Your Honor, but I'm actively." "Of course you are." The judge sighs, shaking his head. "And the father, I assume he's out of the picture?" Lisa's jaw tightens. "He passed away, sir." A few gasps echo softly from the audience, but Judge Prescott remains unfazed. He simply tuts. "Unfortunate. But not uncommon." Lisa grips the edges of the table. The implication is clear. He doesn't see her as a responsible mother. He sees her as another statistic. Lisa takes a deep breath. She refuses to let him rattle her. She knows she has the truth on her side. She carefully places a stack of documents on the table. "Your Honor, I have my rental receipts right here. I have proof that I paid every month on time. If you'll just take a look." Before she can finish, Mr. Dalton, the landlord's slick, well-dressed lawyer, steps forward. "Your Honor," he says smoothly, "while I'm sure Miss Carter believes she's in the right, there's been a misunderstanding. My client's lease agreement states that tenants must submit payments through our online portal. Miss Carter, however, made a few payments through direct bank transfer, which violates the contract. Therefore my client is within his legal right to evict." Lisa's eyes widen. "That wasn't in my original lease agreement. That portal was only introduced a few months ago, and I wasn't told I couldn't." Judge Prescott holds up a hand. "Miss Carter, the lease is the lease. It is not the responsibility of the landlord to remind tenants to follow basic contractual agreements." Lisa stares at him in disbelief. "But I have written proof that I paid." "The method shouldn't matter if..." The judge exhales sharply, looking bored. "You clearly don't understand how contracts work. Your failure to comply with the terms means you are in violation. I don't need to see any more." Lisa's heart pounds. This isn't justice. This is a decision that was made before she even walked in. Judge Prescott leans forward, his expression unreadable. Then in a slow, measured tone, he speaks. You know, Miss Carter, cases like yours are far too common in my courtroom. A young single mother, no stable income, poor decision-making skills, and now looking for a loophole to avoid consequences. Do you think that's fair to landlords who do their job properly? Lisa's mouth opens, but she's too stunned to respond. I see it all the time, the judge continues, shaking his head. People looking for a free pass instead of making better life choices. A few people in the audience chuckle, nodding in agreement. Others shift uncomfortably in their seats, aware that something about this moment feels deeply wrong. Lisa's vision blurs as humiliation burns through her. She knows she has the truth on her side, but truth doesn't seem to matter in this room. Your case is dismissed, the judge declares. Eviction upheld. The finality of those words slams into Lisa like a wrecking ball. Her hands tremble as she gathers her papers. The laughter in the room lingers in her ears like a cruel echo. But as she turns to leave, something inside her shifts. This isn't over, not by a long shot. The courtroom buzzed with a mixture of tension and anticipation as the proceedings unfolded. Among the audience, Mr. Henry Reynolds, a retired lawyer, sat quietly in the back, observing everything with a keen eye. He was there out of curiosity, perhaps drawn by memories of cases he once fought passionately. But today his attention was captured by the young woman at the front, Lisa Carter, who despite the bleakness of her situation, exuded a quiet determination. As Lisa stood at the defendant's table, facing the judgmental gaze of Judge Prescott, Mr. Reynolds began to notice inconsistencies in the landlord's claims. He leaned forward slightly, straining to catch every word spoken. The landlord's lawyer, slick and arrogant, detailed how Lisa had failed to adhere to the terms of her lease. My client, Mr. Whitman, has all the right to evict this tenant due to her consistent late payments, the lawyer said, his tone dripping with contempt. She clearly doesn't understand the responsibilities that come with renting a home. Mr. Reynolds shook his head, muttering to himself. That's not what I saw in those documents. He recalled Lisa's evidence, receipts, bank statements, and emails that contradicted the landlord's accusations. As the judge made his decision, dismissing Lisa's case with a wave of his hand, and a condescending speech about personal responsibility, Mr. Reynolds felt his blood boil. He couldn't just sit there and watch. As Lisa left the courtroom, her shoulders hunched in defeat, he rose from his seat and followed her outside, driven by an instinct to help. The moment Lisa stepped outside, the weight of her defeat hit her like a tidal wave. The cool air felt heavy against her skin, and she stumbled to a nearby bench, her heart racing. She dropped her head into her hands, her breath hitching as tears began to flow freely. This isn't happening. She had worked so hard to provide for her son, Malik, who was waiting at home, blissfully unaware of the turmoil unfolding in her life. Flashbacks flooded her mind, each memory a reminder of her struggles, of the long nights spent working extra shifts, the juggling of bills, and the countless sacrifices made to ensure Malik had a decent life. Mommy, when will we have a big house? Malik's innocent question echoed in her mind. Lisa remembered the time they drove past a beautiful neighborhood, Malik pointing excitedly at the houses. She wanted to tell him they could have that someday. But now the fear of losing their current home weighed heavily on her, threatening to crush her spirit. Why is this happening to me? She whispered to herself, feeling utterly defeated. And just then, a voice broke through her despair. Excuse me, Miss Carter. She looked up, startled, and met the kind eyes of Mr. Reynolds, the retired lawyer she'd seen in the courtroom. Reynolds took a seat beside her, giving her a moment to compose herself. I saw what happened in there, he said gently. You were treated unfairly. That ruling was not just. Lisa sniffed, wiping her tears away. I don't know what to do now. I can't lose my home. Malik needs stability. Mr. Reynolds nodded, his expression serious. I understand. My name is Henry Reynolds, and I've been practicing law for over 40 years. I believe I can help you. Lisa's heart raced at his words. Help me. But how? The judge already made his ruling. Mr. Reynolds leaned forward, his voice firm yet reassuring. We can appeal. I believe there are grounds to challenge the eviction, especially considering the inconsistencies in your landlord's claims. She hesitated, the weight of her situation pressing down on her. What's the catch? Why would you help me? Because I've seen too many people like you, single mothers, working hard, only to be trampled by a system that doesn't care. I want to fight for you, but you need to understand it won't be easy. The landlord has power, and the judge is biased. Lisa met his gaze, searching for sincerity. She saw it, the determination in his eyes. I'll do whatever it takes, she said finally. I'm in. With a newfound sense of purpose, Lisa and Mr. Reynolds returned to her apartment to begin gathering evidence. The dimly lit space felt more like a battleground now, each document a weapon in their fight for justice. Let's start with your lease, Mr. Reynolds instructed, spreading the papers out on the kitchen table. He sifted through them carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. We need to find any language that could support your case. As they searched through the clutter, Lisa felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. I have all my receipts too. I kept them just in case. Good thinking, Mr. Reynolds replied, smiling for the first time. Let's see what you've got. They spent hours combing through paperwork, Lisa's anxiety slowly giving way to determination. Together they meticulously organized the documents, rent receipts, bank statements, and emails exchanged with Mr. Whitman. Look at this, Mr. Reynolds said, pointing to a specific clause in her lease agreement. It states that rent must be paid on the first of each month, but it does not specify the payment method. If you've paid on time, then you're in compliance. Lisa felt a surge of relief. So he had no right to evict me. Exactly. But we'll need more evidence to prove a pattern of misconduct, Mr. Reynolds said, gathering his things. Let's talk to your neighbors. Knocking on doors became a new routine for Lisa and Mr. Reynolds. They spoke to every tenant in the building, collecting stories and testimonies. Mrs. Rodriguez, a widow in her 50s, opened her door with a wary expression. I don't want any trouble, she said at first, but Mr. Reynolds quickly reassured her. We're not here to cause trouble. We're here to uncover the truth. Mrs. Rodriguez hesitated before sharing her own tale of woe. He tried to evict me last year, because I was late on one payment. I had just lost my job, but I fought back. Did you win? Lisa asked, her heart racing. Yes, but it took everything I had. He has lawyers on his side. Each neighbor had a similar story. Daniel, the young father who was threatened with eviction when he couldn't pay an inflated rent. And Tanya, who was forced out after the landlord charged hidden fees. Lisa's resolve deepened. Whitman was targeting vulnerable tenants, and it had to stop. As they compiled the testimonies, Mr. Reynolds' face lit up with excitement. This is solid evidence. We can prove a pattern of harassment and misconduct. Lisa couldn't help but smile. So we have a chance. More than a chance. But we need to dig deeper. Let's look into the judge. That night, Mr. Reynolds immersed himself in research, combing through legal databases and court records. He wanted to uncover any history of bias from Judge Prescott. As he sifted through the cases, his heart sank. Unbelievable, he muttered to himself, reading through a series of past rulings. Time and time again, Judge Prescott had dismissed cases involving single mothers or low-income tenants. His rulings were often swayed by the testimony of wealthy landlords, leaving vulnerable families without protection. Mr. Reynolds felt a mix of anger and determination. This wasn't just about Lisa. It was about exposing a system that had consistently failed those who needed it most. He called Lisa, urgency in his voice. We need to meet. I've uncovered some troubling information about the judge. The next day, they gathered in her small living room, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation. Mr. Reynolds laid out his findings, the pages filled with printed rulings and notes. Judge Prescott has a long history of siding with landlords over tenants, he explained. This isn't just a personal battle for you, Lisa. This is about exposing a pattern of discrimination against vulnerable people. Lisa's heart raced as she took in his words. So this is bigger than just my case. Exactly. If we can prove his bias, we might not only help you but also bring attention to the injustices faced by others in similar situations. Tears welled in Lisa's eyes. She had been fighting not just for herself, but for everyone who had been wronged by a system designed to keep them down. I won't let this go unnoticed, she declared, her voice steady. Mr. Reynolds smiled,
pride evident in his gaze. "That's the spirit. Together we'll make sure the judge's actions don't go unchallenged." And just like that, Lisa felt a surge of hope. This fight was about justice. The day of the appeal hearing arrived, and Lisa stood outside the courthouse, her heart racing. Today was her chance, a chance to confront not just the injustice done to her, but to stand against a system that had marginalized so many like her. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she wasn't alone. Reynolds stood beside her, his presence a comforting anchor amidst the storm of anxiety. As they entered the courtroom, the atmosphere felt electric. The same judge, Raymond Prescott, presided, and his demeanor shifted from mild annoyance to outright irritation when he saw Lisa again. He adjusted his glasses, his expression betraying his discontent. "Miss Carter," he said, his tone clipped. "I thought we were done with this case." "Your Honor, we have new evidence that warrants a reconsideration," Mr. Reynolds stated confidently, stepping forward with a folder in hand. The judge sighed dramatically, rolling his eyes. "I'm not in the mood for games, Mr. Reynolds. This isn't a circus." Lisa's stomach churned at the judge's dismissive attitude, but she steeled herself, remembering the faces of her neighbors who had suffered under the same system. Mr. Reynolds opened the folder, revealing documents and testimony. "I believe this evidence will clarify the situation." The judge glanced at the papers, then back at Lisa, his irritation evident. What now? More irrelevant documents? But Lisa, emboldened by Mr. Reynolds' support, spoke up. "Your Honor, if I may." Surprised by her interruption, the judge raised an eyebrow. "Make it quick."
"I'm not here to play games. I'm here because I have a son who depends on me. I'm here because I deserve a fair chance." Taking a step forward, Lisa looked directly at the judge, her voice steady and clear. "I understand that you have a lot of cases to handle, but my life isn't just another file on your desk. I'm a single mother, and I'm fighting for my right to a home." She could feel the tension in the room shift as she spoke. "Single mothers aren't failures, Your Honor. We are warriors. We fight every day for our children, for a better life. We deserve respect and understanding, not condescension." A murmur rippled through the audience, and Lisa continued, her passion igniting a fire within her. "The system is rigged against us. It's easier to dismiss us, to laugh at our struggles, than to recognize our strength. But I won't let that happen. I refuse to be another statistic." Lisa paused, letting her words sink in. The judge's expression hardened, but she pressed on. "I have proof of my payments, proof that I did everything by the book. Yet you chose to side with a landlord who takes advantage of those who can't fight back. What does that say about justice in this courtroom?" The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, and for the first time, Lisa felt a flicker of confidence. Judge Prescott shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and Mr. Reynolds seized the moment. "Your Honor, I'd like to present this evidence." He laid out the documents on the table, testimonies from neighbors, copies of Lisa's lease, and payment records that clearly demonstrated her compliance with the terms. "This evidence shows a pattern of misconduct from Mr. Whitman," Mr. Reynolds stated firmly. "He has been taking advantage of tenants who lack the resources to fight back. This isn't just about Lisa, it's about the rights of every tenant in this building." The judge glanced through the papers, his expression growing more severe with each passing moment. "You think this will change my mind?" he muttered, but the doubt in his voice was palpable. Lisa watched as the landlord, Mr. Whitman, shifted in his seat, his confident demeanor faltering. "This is all just hearsay," he protested weakly, but Lisa could see the cracks in his armor. "Is it?" Mr. Reynolds countered. "How do you explain the discrepancies in your own records? The late fees charged for payments made on time, the threats made to tenants who didn't comply with arbitrary rules." As the evidence stacked against him, Whitman's bravado crumbled. He glanced nervously at the judge, who was now scanning the documents with increasing concern. "Your Honor," Whitman stammered, "this is all a misunderstanding." The judge's eyes narrowed. "A misunderstanding that has led to numerous tenants suffering under your management. That's a rather convenient narrative, Mr. Whitman." Lisa could feel the tide turning. This was her moment, and she wasn't about to let it slip away. After a tense silence that felt like an eternity, Judge Prescott finally cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "Given the evidence presented, and the testimonies of other tenants, I find it necessary to reconsider my previous ruling." A ripple of disbelief washed over the courtroom, and Lisa's heart raced. While I recognize the need for landlords to enforce contracts, I also see that there is a responsibility to treat tenants with respect and fairness. Therefore I am overturning the eviction notice against Miss Carter. The courtroom erupted into murmurs, some gasping in surprise while others quietly celebrated. Lisa couldn't believe what she was hearing. She exchanged a stunned glance with Mr. Reynolds, who smiled proudly at her. And in light of the wrongful eviction attempts, Miss Carter is awarded damages for emotional distress and loss of stability. The judge banged his gavel, trying to regain order, but Lisa barely heard him over the pounding of her heart. She felt like she could breathe for the first time in days. "Thank you, Your Honor," Lisa said, her voice filled with emotion. As she stood there, tears of relief and joy streaming down her cheeks, she felt a sense of empowerment wash over her. As the court session concluded, Mr. Reynolds stood up, clearing his throat to address the courtroom. "Your Honor, I believe this ruling deserves further scrutiny. I intend to file a formal complaint against you regarding your handling of this case." The whispers spread like wildfire. Could this be the end of Judge Prescott's career? The judge's face paled, and he shot Mr. Reynolds a look of incredulity. "You can't be serious." "Deadly serious," Mr. Reynolds replied, his tone unwavering. "The evidence clearly shows a bias against tenants, especially single mothers. This is not just about Miss Carter, it's about the integrity of this courtroom." Lisa felt a rush of exhilaration as she watched the judge squirm. The power dynamic had shifted dramatically, and for the first time, she felt like she was on the winning side. As she walked out of the courtroom, the weight of the world lifted off her shoulders. She glanced back one last time at Judge Prescott, who was still seated at his bench, his expression a mixture of disbelief and frustration. "Let's make sure he knows we're not going away," Mr. Reynolds said as they stepped outside, determination etched on his face. Lisa nodded, her heart filled with hope. This was just the beginning of their fight for justice, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been silenced, and together they would ensure that their voices would be heard. As Lisa walked out of the courthouse, the sun shone brightly overhead, illuminating her path with a warm golden glow. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if the weight of the world had finally been lifted from her shoulders. She turned to look back at the building that had once seemed so imposing, the walls now echoing with her triumph. "I did it," she whispered to herself, a smile breaking across her face. The memory of Judge Prescott's reluctant acceptance of her evidence flooded her mind. She had stood up for herself, faced her fears, and emerged victorious. Lisa was no longer just a struggling mother. She was a fighter, someone who had challenged the system and won. Suddenly, she felt a familiar tug on her leg. "Mommy," Malik exclaimed, rushing toward her with open arms. She knelt down, and he enveloped her in a tight hug. "I knew you could do it. I knew you'd win." Tears brimmed in her eyes as she held him close. "Thank you, baby. I couldn't have done it without you. You give me strength every day." Malik pulled back to look at her, his big brown eyes sparkling with pride. "You're my superhero, Mommy." In that moment, Lisa realized just how much she had transformed. She had faced her fears, stood up for her rights, and fought for a better future, not just for herself but for Malik too. No longer would she allow anyone to make her feel small or powerless. She was a mother, a warrior, and a beacon of hope for others. As the days passed, the fallout from the hearing reverberated throughout the community. News of Lisa's victory spread, reaching the local newspapers and social media. People began to speak out about their experiences with Judge Prescott, sharing stories of bias and unfair treatment. Mr. Reynolds wasted no time in filing the formal complaint against the judge. It wasn't just for Lisa, it was for everyone who had ever felt powerless in a courtroom. "Too many people have suffered under this man's rulings," Mr. Reynolds told a reporter during an interview. "It's time for accountability." The complaint gained traction, prompting a formal investigation into Judge Prescott's conduct. Lisa watched the news coverage with a mix of hope and apprehension. Would this truly lead to change? She learned that other tenants had come forward, adding their voices to the growing chorus of discontent. Each story echoed her own, revealing a pattern of discrimination and abuse that had gone unchecked for too long. In the days that followed, Lisa felt a sense of purpose. She was no longer just fighting for her own rights. She was fighting for the rights of all tenants who had been marginalized and mistreated. With the compensation money awarded to her, Lisa took a significant step forward. She found a new apartment in a safe neighborhood, one with parks, schools, and a community that felt supportive and welcoming. As she settled in, she decorated Malik's room with bright colors and playful designs, ensuring he felt at home. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Malik looked up at her with admiration. "Mommy, can we get a dog?" Lisa chuckled, ruffling his hair. "Maybe one day. Right now, let's just enjoy our new home." But Lisa wasn't content to stop there. Inspired by her experience, she began advocating for tenants' rights. She attended local community meetings, sharing her story and encouraging others to speak up. "I was silent for too long," she told her neighbors, "but we have the power to change things. We can demand better treatment, accountability, and fairness." A local news outlet caught wind of her advocacy and requested an interview. As Lisa sat down with the reporter, she felt a wave of nerves wash over her, but she quickly reminded herself of her purpose. "Today I'm here to speak for those who feel they don't have a voice," she said passionately. "No one should ever feel afraid of losing their home. We need to stand together and demand justice." Her interview aired the following week, and the response was overwhelming. Messages of support poured in from people all over the community, thanking her for her courage and inspiring them to take action. As she watched the news segment, tears of joy streamed down her cheeks. She had transformed from a frightened tenant into a powerful advocate for change, a voice for the voiceless. Months later, Lisa stood at the park with Malik, watching him play with other children. She felt an immense sense of pride as she took in the sights and sounds of their new life. "Mommy, look," Malik shouted, racing toward her with a big grin. "I made a new friend." Lisa smiled, her heart swelling with happiness. "That's great, sweetie. I'm so proud of you." In that moment, she realized that this victory wasn't just about winning a court case. It was about reclaiming her life, her dignity, and her identity. She had learned that true strength comes from within. It comes from standing up for oneself and fighting against the odds. Lisa had turned her pain into purpose, her struggles into strength, and her defeat into a battle cry for justice. As the sun set over the park, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Lisa felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey she had taken. It had been a long and arduous path, but it had led her to this moment, surrounded by love, hope, and a community that believed in her. And as she watched Malik laughing with his friends, she knew that their future was brighter than ever. Together they would continue to fight for what was right, inspiring others to do the same, and proving that one voice can indeed make a difference. In that moment, Lisa Carter became more than just a single mother. She became a champion for justice, a beacon of hope, and a symbol of resilience for all who dared to dream. 1 year later, the sun streamed through the large windows of the legal aid office where Lisa Carter now worked, illuminating the bustling space filled with dedicated advocates and hopeful clients. Lisa had spent the past year channeling her experiences into helping others navigate the complex world of tenant rights. She had taken her own struggle and transformed it into a mission, pouring her heart and soul into the work she did. As a legal assistant at the non-profit, she guided families facing eviction, helped them understand their rights, and empowered them to stand up against injustices just as she had done. Her own story had become a beacon of hope for many, and she found fulfillment in each success story, no matter how small. Each day Lisa stepped into the office with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to fight for those who felt powerless. But even more gratifying was the way Malik thrived. He had adjusted beautifully to their new life, making friends and excelling in school. Every evening, they would sit together and talk about their day, their bond stronger than ever. However, Lisa also felt a sense of unfinished business. News of Judge Prescott's downfall had spread like wildfire. The investigation into his conduct led to scrutiny, and eventually, he was forced to retire early. The courtroom that had once felt like a battleground, now felt like a place of justice, a space where fairness was being restored. One crisp autumn day, as Lisa prepared to leave the office, she received a call that changed everything. A colleague informed her that a new case had arrived, a struggling mother facing eviction, desperate for help. With her heart racing, Lisa knew exactly what to do. She grabbed her coat and headed to the courthouse, determined to make a difference. As she entered the familiar building, she felt a rush of emotions,
Memories of her own battle flooded back. The echoes of the judge's voice, the weight of judgment, the feeling of being unheard. But this time, she wasn't walking in as a defeated tenant. She was walking in as an advocate ready to change lives. She spotted the mother, a young black woman, anxious and clutching a folder of documents, her eyes darting around the room. Lisa approached her with a warm smile. "Hi there, I'm Lisa, I'm here to help you," she said, her voice gentle but strong. The woman looked up, surprised and relieved. "Really? You can help me?" "Absolutely," Lisa replied, her heart swelling with empathy. "Let's go through everything together. You don't have to face this alone." As they walked toward the courtroom, Lisa felt a sense of purpose wash over her. She was no longer just a single mother fighting for her home. She was a lifeline for others, a source of hope in a world that sometimes felt dark. And as she helped the young mother prepare for the battle ahead, Lisa realized that her journey had come full circle. She was making a difference, one life at a time. In that moment, she knew that together, they would fight against the injustices, and together, they would find a way to triumph.